Hello again, Dlana Hall Bodmer, part 2 of the Finding Gina videos. This is for those interested in the more specific details, an extension of video 1. I'm going to read you the cover letter that I sent to the authorities so that you know exactly what they have. And I will put the soil analysis report and the chemical profile summary tables and Dr. Vass's input up on my website, themiraculousjourney.com. So if you want to delve even deeper, you could. But this 5-page cover letter that I wrote, well, it's quite extensive, 5 pages. Why? Well, it's kind of hard to take 2 years of what we have done and try to compile it in a manner so that somebody can come to the conclusion that we have indeed found my sister's remains. Gina Hall's hidden burial sites. We have recovered what we can recover. And we need to also make sure that they have relevant information regarding all the other victims. All in one letter. And what they do with this information, of course, is up to them. And as I said in video 1, I still believe it's also up to the people. So the packets that I have sent out to the various authorities, like the sheriffs, the Radford City Police, the State of Virginia Investigative Department, who holds Gina's case open ever since 1980 because we did not find the body in 1980. And I'm hopeful that this relevant new information will help them close that body never found file. Because I assure you, what can be recovered has been. And maybe they'll even open up a new case for a dismemberment charge or combine them for other victims, if they so choose. I do hope they're already working on it. And the same information was sent to Virginia Parole Board. Epperly was just transferred from Lawrenceville to Buckingham. And the reports have been sent to the prosecutors also, the Commonwealth Attorney of Pulaski County, Radford City, and Montgomery County, and some other agencies. As I shared in part 1, Finding Gina videos, the Montgomery County sites have now been confirmed by data that further validates Meadow Creek as a relevant connector to Epperly's victims. Both the Steep Place Dumpsite and Meadow Creek are in Montgomery County, which is why they too received this information. Meadow Creek is indeed the connecting piece that brings us closer to understanding the repeated patterns of behavior of a serial killer, in my opinion. And the Steep Place dump site is the location where most of Gina's remains were recovered, as well as other relevant data necessary in understanding what transpired on the banks of Meadow Creek early morning hours of June 29, 1980. It's all connected together. Same patterns, same plans, same burial site areas, same everything. This letter can be overwhelming. I know it is hard to wrap our head around the information provided in this letter. I know I had trouble as I, would learn new pieces of information and then have to bring myself back to, there's a purpose for this, there's a purpose for this. And really, that letter is nowhere near the extent of what we have learned. It just touches on the relevant points that tie back to the soil analysis, which is the purpose of what we're doing right now. And I understand that it is hard to at first learn, and realize about the people that live right where we live. But the data, the science, is painting a picture of the reality of that evil. And it did exist. So why would we even think that it's changed now? This wasn't a small operation. It has to be given attention. So, we will begin with this letter. The enclosed information is provided regarding Stephen Epperly and his June 29, 1980 murder, and disposal of Gina Renee Hall's physical remains in 1980, and the recent recovery of physical remains. The analytical and scientific enclosed reports are also presented for evidentiary consideration regarding not only Gina, but also Angela Rader, the Roanoke missing teen from 1977. The enclosed laboratory reports are one more additional piece of validation to the work we have been doing for almost 2 years. In the fall of 2019, we identified 8 different locations relevant to Gina Renee Hall, and throughout the process, we have shared relevant information with applicable authorities. In early 2020, Peace River Human Remains Detection Dogs positively confirmed all of these Gina locations as having human remains decomposition present. We then began excavation of 4 of these 8 Gina Hall identified and confirmed areas. Human bone fragments were unearthed at all 4 locations. The last excavation providing the larger samples of remains as well as a bracelet and other items. I have also met with the forensic anthropology team who has kept one of the bones for further analysis. Before I recap the details of how we got to this day, I will begin with the ending, a simple, straightforward summary. These soil reports are from an accredited environmental lab who analyzed the soil and reported on its chemical contents. The soil sent to the lab was sampled from Gina Renee Hall excavation sites. These locations were identified not only by the Quantum Oscillator, following Gina's familial positive signal to the area, but also sites were further confirmed by the human remains detection dogs, specifically trained in older cadaver, which gave us accurate precision as to where to excavate. The same process was used to determine the Meadow Creek site collected for Angela Rader. Number 1, the lab reports confirmed that human remains had been or still are at all 4 sites sampled. Number 2, the report confirms independently the findings of the human remains detection dogs and the Quantum Oscillator. Number 3, the sampled labeled Dumpsite 2 foot was the weakest, which makes sense because it would have migrated downwards to the Dumpsite 4 foot depth level, which was the soil sample with the second highest concentration of human decomposition chemicals. Gina's Meadow Creek soil sample was the highest, and the Meadow Creek sample submitted, Angela Rader's dirt, was also positive for human decomposition chemicals. The reports also confirm what we saw and collected as we excavated. The reports confirm that animal markers were detected in the dump site soil, which shows the system works because we did in fact find cut animal bones at the dump site mixed in with everything else, including the bracelet area. We did not find any animal bone at the Meadow Creek excavation, just like the report indicates. Now for the detailed facts, as brief as I can be, as to how we came to have these soil samples. It was a complex process, and I have summarized it as best as I can. If more details are needed, I can provide. Please keep in mind how these sites were identified as you review the enclosed 23-page analytical laboratory report, the 9-page peer-reviewed Forensic Science International Journal article, as well as the condensed summary interpretation of the Virginia soil composition results, and the summary table of chemical profile of Virginia sites. The data indicates human decomposition results and are present in all 4 soil samples tested, and significantly present in 3. The sites were identified no differently than the female bone fragments that were retrieved from the subfloor of my sister's killer's bedroom closet. The quantum oscillator, the instrument used to guide us to areas of significance following the familial positive signals, not only from Gina's mother, but also from Angela Rader's brother. I and many others have witnessed narrowing in on the smallest of remote places. For example, the exact pinpointed area on a vast, steep mountainside, a patch of ground underneath thick bramble in the middle of 1,000 acres of hunting grounds, later confirmed to be a favorite childhood Epperly hunting ground by his relative. The flat top of a remote ridge, at first seemingly impossible to access, a field, a river, a lake, and on and on. Best described as needles in a haystack. Quantum, Gina left behind. All confirmed by human remains detection dogs, cadaver dogs, specifically trained in various stages of decomposition. And now we have the science for those who need more validation that we have indeed located Gina Renee Hall's remains. On June 30th, 2021, I sent 4 samples of soil to an environmental laboratory. 3 of the 4 samples were collected from 2 of Gina's 4 different excavation sites. 1 sample was also sent from soil connected to Angela Rader, from one of the 3 Angela Rader positively identified sites. The one we sent was the Meadow Creek site. The human remains detection dogs also alerted when we took them to 2 of the other Angela Rader's 3 positive signal locations. We did not take the HRD dogs inside the Epperly home place, only Meadow Creek and another property we call Angela's burial site. The soil sample was from Meadow Creek in regards to Angela. We have not disturbed her burial site, only confirmed after the instrument identified it by the dogs, because we believe it should be a crime scene. Walter's being very patient. I didn't write that. Each glass vial was filled with soil from 3 different locations. Each vial contained about 1/8 of a cup of dirt that I collected and stored from each site. I overnighted the 4 small samples to the laboratory on June the 30th, 2021, and the reports state that the 4 samples were received in good order July the 2nd, 2021. Enclosed is the soil analysis laboratory report from Environmental Analytical Service, Inc., an accredited lab who has been in business since 1985. Also enclosed is a journal publication for reference. This forensic process and research is explained in the Forensic Science International Journal, article number 222, written by Dr. Arpad Vass in August 2011, peer-reviewed and recognized and accepted by Forensic Science on June the 4th, 2012, and published on June 22nd, 2012. The research covers identification of volatile components of human decomposition and analysis of the specific chemical compounds found in human decomposition. The chemicals are volatilized into the airspace above the soil in an enclosed glass container. They are then identified by the environmental lab. When the analysis shows multiple chemicals from the human markers chemical compound list, some specific only to humans, and the totality of chemicals present from that human-specific list is 50% or higher, even after 40 plus years, it is a strong indicator of the still present human decomposition. Of the 56 possible human compounds that could be present, 30 match the age criteria, i.e. later stages of human decomposition, not earlier. For example, 40 plus years. And of these 30, only 22 match the environment from where the samples came from. For example, peat, sand, clay, wet, dry, etc. And if all 22 of these specific chemical profiles were to be found present in that small sample of soil, this would be considered a perfect 100% match of applicable chemicals known to be found in human decomposition. So the 50% reference is a benchmark for the total of the various chemical compounds detected that combine to total 50% of the listed human chemicals known to be present in human decomposition, factored for age of corpse and the soil environment. So if 50% or more of the 22 chemical compounds are extracted from the soil, it is an indication of human remains presence. The analysis of the soil for the presence of human-specific markers for the Meadow Creek soil were 68% of what is considered a 100% of all possible. The analysis for the Steep Place Dumpsite soil from the 4-foot depth were 64%, the 2-foot 41%, and of significance is the soil from the Meadow Creek Dog Alert, Angela Rader site, at 50% with compounds detected and labeled as human-specific markers. For clarification, I named Dr. Arpad Vass as the project manager and myself as responsible for the payment. I noticed in the report the lab admin lady made the assumption that since I named Dr. Vass as the contact, that he also sampled the soil to be analyzed. This would be incorrect, as I packaged the soil from soil that I have collected from the various excavation sites, stored for future use. I kept a photo record of the samples before overnighting everything for analysis. They state everything was received in good order. In my opinion, which is not really from a qualified position, just logical questioning as a bystander, the conservative use of 50% is surprising to me. Why not 30%, 20%? After all, when these chemical compounds are found in combination with one another, not just one isolated chemical, but several present together, and are also noted as human-specific, then why would they even be there in that combination at all in that tiny little bit of soil, if human remains had not been there at some point? Especially when decomposition is defined as the separation into constituents by chemical reaction, the breakdown of organic materials, disintegration, and is determined to be in agreement with the human remains detection dogs. That factor alone tells me maybe even a smaller percentage would apply when the two are in conjunction together. So seems to me it's conclusive that decomposition is present. Not to forget how all these sites were initially located. Only 2 of the 8 instrument-identified places were familiar to me from my 1980 and 2016 searches. We would have never found what we have found without Dr. Vass and the Quantum Oscillator. The 2 sample reports labeled Dumpsite were the most significant in terms of evidentiary eyes-on findings in relation to Gina Hall. After the HRD dogs pinpointed the specific decomp area in February 2021 on this very large steep mountain slope, we then excavated twice, first in April, second in June. We found substantially significant sized bone here in comparison to prior excavations. We also found cut animal bones, a bracelet, and cloth fibers, etc. at the Steep Place Dumpsite dig. 3 off-duty investigators were with us on the first excavation, and actually were the ones who unearthed the bracelet and some of the bones. The soil was sent to the lab on June 30th, 2021. On July 8th, 2021, I took the bones, bracelet, and fibers to a forensic anthropology team who kept one of the bones from the 4-foot depth, 2nd June 2021 dig. They wanted to analyze further because that one, as well as 4 other pieces of bone, appeared visually to be burned human bone. Their complete analysis has not yet been received. Also, from their visual inspection of the cut animal bones, they indicated the cut bones were from a large mammal, like a cow, not a deer. In 1980, we found cow remains off of Hazel Hollow Road, near one of the 8 sites where Gina's initial positive signal was very strong. This most likely a place where my sister was placed for several hours after 3 a.m. and bled out significantly before being taken to Meadow Creek. There is more data that could be shared about that location. The steep placed soil that was sent from the 2-foot ground excavation, the dig depth after the loose rock and shell were removed, and from the second deeper 4-foot excavation, both had human chemical compounds present. The 4-foot depth sample with 14 chemical profiles present over the 50% mark in total, significantly indicative of a human decompositional event. Animal markers also came back in the lab analysis from these 2 samples, which further validates accuracy as we did retrieve animal bone mixed in the same dig areas found with human. Animal and human markers are not the same. The majority of my sister's remains were disposed of from the high cliff steep place, a large rock stopping whatever she had been placed in before her remains were thrown over the cliff into the local dump site. A second place on that same steep mountain was also confirmed by the instrument and the dogs. Excavation was not completed at that second identified and dog-confirmed site. It was too difficult. One of the other excavated Gina locations at the first excavated site, referred to as the 360 Valley, could have been from bird scatter, considering the distance from the dump site, but other indicators regarding that specific site make that less likely. The Draper Ridge excavated site, as is to Meadow Creek, are definitely, without question, one of this, in my opinion, serial killer's relevant places. He followed a ritualistic, repeatable pattern when taking into account the information that has emerged from the earlier years' victims. I call them victims because why else would their bone fragments be hidden in the subfloor of his bedroom closet? The Meadow Creek labeled soil sample had the highest percentage of presence of known chemical compound human markers known to be found in human decomposition. The same site was first reported in May 2016 to Radford Police Department as a Gina Hall dismemberment witnessed event. 2 men were witnessed. The Meadow Creek site was also one of the 8 locations identified from the initial scan by Dr. Arpad Vass from the top of Draper Valley Mountain in November 2019. The patented Quantum Oscillator instrument is designed to work based on unique individual frequencies. In addition, in January 2020, I brought in the Peace River Canine human remains detection dogs, specifically trained in cadaver, who pinpointed the Meadow Creek area where we later organized a team and excavated in July 2020. Earlier excavations at 2 other locations were completed in early 2020. An area near Isaac Walton League Road in Pulaski County, the first excavation site, and a place I call the 360. And in July 2020, a second excavation of an area in Draper, later confirmed also as a favorite Epperly hunting area. This same remote Draper Ridge area had 5 dog alerts in February 2021 on the same ridge as Gina's already excavated location. We took the dogs back there after we found the bone fragments in Epperly's house. Using those fragments, we had a positive signal for a match to the African American bone fragments removed from the Epperly bedroom closet subfloor in August 2020. The Isaac Walton League Worrell property that was visited with permission in January 2020 with the HRD dogs to confirm Angela Rader's positively identified signal and suspected burial site, which the dogs did find and pinpoint confirmation further, as well as 3 other human remains alerts on a 10-minute walk to the vicinity of Angela's hidden gravesite area. This information was reported to the Pulaski County Sheriff Worrell's office, but no one ever called to inquire further. Now we have 2 other unidentified victims registering on this same property. Using the bone fragments found in the Epperly bedroom closet subfloor, August 2020, as the sample in the instrument, we scanned for all 3 unidentified girls from Draper Mountain, and also Roanoke South to Smith County. Multiple places were identified, with 2 of the unidentified girls registering at the same Worrell property vicinity, near Angela's earlier dog-confirmed site, but far enough away that it is possible the additional 3 dog alerts would bring the total to 6. And that land not only registered with the 2 unidentified's unique marker, but also Caucasian bone registered present in the exact same location, which indicates that that land is to be considered as their possible hidden burial place site. So 3 girls from the closet remains connect to this land. HRD dogs in conjunction with the Quantum Oscillator, as well as a forensic examination, could possibly locate remains and confirm. So to recap, the positive signals from 2 different unidentified females whose bones were retrieved from Epperly's closet subfloor and used to lead us to that same Worrell property within the same vicinity of the already instrument-identified January 2020 dog-confirmed Angela Rader burial site, whose bone fragments were also retrieved from the closet subfloor. We could have 6 separate sites of significance on that land, and one of Gina's excavated sites is close nearby. We have not pinpointed the exact 2x2 locations of the 2 unidentified without going back on the property, or the other sites from the 3 random dog alerts as they walked to Angela's site in January 2020, which could be confirmed if we were back on the land, in closer proximity, and of course in conjunction with the HRD dogs. The week the dogs were scheduled to come back up from Florida to work Draper Ridge, Shanklin Farm, Meadow Creek, and the Steep Place, we had also tried to schedule the Worrell property. But the gracious owner of that property had been in a nursing home and passed away that very week, and I could not secure permission from the owner's relatives or Sheriff Worrell of Pulaski County. We did ask. Even a local called to ask for me. It is important to note this land was not owned by the Worrell family in 1980, but by a relative of Mrs. Worrell. We could have spent 1 hour on that property and we would know whether we have 3 victims or 6 victims or more. Which leads to the 4th sample analysis, a disturbing result. In February 2021, we took a team of the HRD dogs to the Shanklin farm that borders the stretch of Meadow Creek, about 1/4 of a mile up creek from Gina's Meadow Creek site. Again, the landowners were so very kind. The doctor's instrument initially registered for Angela at 3 different places. In addition to her burial site, she also registered inside the Epperly home place, which led to the subfloor and the bone fragments of Angela and 3 other unidentified females. And this Meadow Creek soil sample, labeled Meadow Creek Dog Alert, on the analysis report, was soil collected personally by me. When the dog alerted on that specific area near the creek, an area also instrument confirmed as an Angela's site match, I collected a box full of the soil from the spot the dog alerted on. I decided in June when I sent Gina's soil samples to also send one for Angela. The Meadow Creek Dog Alert site has 11 chemical profile, human profile markers, meeting the 50% benchmark indicative that a human decomp event occurred at that site, that identified and dog alerted site. When the HRD dog alerted there and the doctor reconfirmed with his instrument using Angela's sample and the positive signal that that spot was indeed her remains, I collected a big shovelful and brought it home. Decomp does not necessarily mean a final burial site. but it is indicative that there was organic human remains, whether blood, dismemberment, physical harm, etc. The decomp odor that HRD dogs can detect and the human chemicals from decomposition are present right there. The soil analysis confirms the dogs and the analysis confirms the quantum oscillator. Angela was harmed in this place, and it is no coincidence that Gina was witnessed being dismembered in that same vicinity 3 years later. Also, as the dogs continued their work up the creek, they alerted on 3 other places in a very short distance. And the instrument picked up on another bonehead about a half of a mile further up the creek. This is not conclusive in itself, but in conjunction with Gina's information, the instruments identifying Angela locations, the dogs confirming Angela's specific locations, the soil analysis, and the bone fragments retrieved from Epperly's bedroom closet subfloor, led to by Angela's familial sample, one should begin to connect the dots. Same patterns, same paths, same plans, same burial areas. Gina was placed for several hours. In regards to the Epperly home place subfloor discovery, what transpired was captured on video. This was done as proof because I was with Walter Rader, Angela's brother, when we visited RPD asking for help. Not to investigate, just to be present and observe as we narrowed in on Angela's signal inside the Epperly home place. His request was not honored, so we proceeded with the owner's permission, narrowing in on the location inside of the house using the oscillator, removing a small pinpointed section of the hardwood floor with the owner's assistance, and I personally helped collect what we found. Tiny bone fragments and bottlenose fly carcasses. All on video and sent to independent people to analyze. A Nebraska University epidemiologist and a respected PhD. A doctor who worked the 9/11 identification of human remains identifying the bone fragments. He identified the 4 closet subfloor samples as all female. After the reports were received, I forwarded copies to all relevant authorities. After no response, I made the reports publicly available on the New Developments page of the MiraculousJourney.com website. Meadow Creek and the bordering farm is connected to Epperly. He hunted these acres for decades, being a relative of the family who owned the land. And there are more relevant facts to the connections to this area. Of most interest, Thrasher was closely associated to this farm. We found an obituary of the matriarch's funeral, and he was the pallbearer. That is a close association and connects him to the same area Epperly frequented. Possibly. Epperly was also connected to the drug dealing business and known to make frequent trips to Fort Lauderdale, as also was indicated on Epperly's list, his ledger with 100 women's names. I do have a meeting scheduled with an expert in DNA analysis. Gina's recovered bones will be analyzed using Gina's mother's DNA if the expert, a PhD with extensive experience and recognition in her field, tells me after her inspection of the bones and the bracelet and cloth fibers that extraction of DNA is at all possible. I will not know until I meet with her later in the fall and she visually examines what we have. And if we do proceed with DNA analysis, her estimate is that it will be late spring before completed. I understand this data enclosed is not in any way necessary for you to know, unless someone wants to prosecute Epperly for dismemberment of his abducted victim, Gina Hall, or to investigate for any of the other victims, including Angela Rader, the 14-year-old child. At a minimum, it seems the Rader family deserves complete closure and a full investigation for Angela Rader's murder with a closing of a 44-year-old cold case. Every month that passes, the hidden body, the bone evidence, continues to decompose. And at this point, it has been 20 months since I first informed authorities of the HRD dogs alert to what is Angela's gravesite. We purposely did not begin excavation because it is a crime scene. Gina's case is different. Epperly has already been prosecuted for Gina's first-degree murder, a success for many reasons that everyone should be grateful for because he would have continued to kill many more women. What is still yet to be known is exactly how many did he kill before Gina, and even right after Gina, before being arrested and prosecuted. What is relevant about the soil analysis report is that there is now an accepted scientific report for Gina's file, indicative of a human decompositional event, in the areas initially identified by the Quantum Oscillator and excavated. I have recorded as much of my sister's remains, or recovered as much of my sister's remains as I could possibly recover. If no one is going to at least consider prosecution of Epperly for dismemberment, or further investigate to determine who was the second man witnessed in Meadow Creek helping Epperly to dismember my sister, reported to Radford PD, and considered a viable lead in 2016, then Gina's case could be closed as her physical remains have been recovered based on the conclusivity of all of this substantiating information. In my opinion, Stephen Epperly is a psychopathic serial killer, and he did not act alone. Justice has not been fully rendered. If after reading all of this, there is still the common naysayer's response that the Hall family is just being taken advantage of, then I can provide them nothing because their mindset was predetermined. I was actually told by state of Virginia investigators that this was the majority opinion circulating, and they were genuinely concerned about me. From where did this opinion mindset originate? My response to them and anyone else that if this ridiculous accusation were to be true, then it must be a very broad network of fraudulent folks in cahoots with one another that includes 2 PhDs with extensive resumes, 1 doctor with years of experience in this field, and 1 doctor whose expertise was called in to help identify 9/11 victims, and who also invented a technique used in fingerprinting by authorities nationwide. I would also add to the growing list of professionals a Nebraska University epidemiologist, an accredited environmental lab in business since 1985, a forensic anthropology team, and Peace River Search and Rescue Incorporated. Please check out their website to see why they are a nationally respected search and rescue team, whose dogs and dog training capabilities are sought by many. Of course, I should not ignore the many caring people who, along with me, witnessed the work we have done, the searches, the excavations, and what has been unearthed, including their very own investigative trained men. Seems a far stretch to actually believe it is all irrelevant. I hope someone somewhere is doing something to finish this and render the justice that should prevail. I will continue to pursue all avenues of truth and be my sister's voice. Not for us, not for the files, but for one reason only. God has led me thus far on the journey for a reason, and his purpose is still yet to be seen. Dr. Arpad Vass and his instrument is to be respected. We would have never known what we now know had it not been for Dr. Vass. I understand how very difficult it is for our investigative authorities to carry the workloads, much less all of the cold cases. But this instrument is key to solving more of them faster. Families deserve closure. Victims can be found. There are 12,000 plus unidentified remains sitting on shelves, which could quickly be minimized maybe easily matched to the sample of loved ones seeking their missing family members. It also could be a world-changing instrument if it can become a means for locating missing and abducted children before they are killed. All people, before they are killed. This is why I will continue my quest for truth, for victims and their families, believing there is an end result for the good of all humanity, bigger than all of us. I hope you too see what I see and do the same. Respectfully, Dlana Hall Bodmer. Thank you.